I was a law student. One moment, I was poring over textbooks, and the next, I woke up to find myself transmigrated into a novel, becoming the older sister of the female protagonist. My sister, the heroine, and three male leads were making a ruckus in the room next door, a cacophony of embarrassing and heart-pounding sounds. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my criminal law textbook and began to read aloud. According to Article 301 of the Criminal Code, those who engage in promiscuous gatherings shall be sentenced to imprisonment of not more than 5 years. The noise next door instantly stopped. I was fine, but the male leads were definitely in trouble. Darlings, the full story is complete. Follow me to read 10 completed works a day. Gloomy little potato reminds you, I'm about to spill the beans. I was a law student who had tragically died after staying up all night reading a novel, only to transmigrate into this ridiculous story. My good sister, Joelle, was the female protagonist of this trashy novel. Joelle was fair-skinned and beautiful, with a slender figure and delicate skin that would redden at the slightest touch. Any man who met her would be irresistibly drawn to her, a typical siren in a trashy novel. In the original book, Joelle had 5 male leads, each with an extraordinary background: tycoons, young masters, heirs to crime families, and so on. Every man was utterly infatuated with her, and she would play hard to get. They would chase her, and at the slightest disagreement, they'd engage in explicit activities. The 5 male leads went from competing to eventually sharing, culminating in a scene of great harmony with Joelle and all 5 men. This shameless, morally bankrupt story had caused considerable trauma to my pure heart. I never expected to wake up and find myself inside this book. My current identity was Joni, Joelle's older sister. Don't ask why my name was so carelessly chosen. Only the male and female protagonists got proper names from the author. Minor canon fodder characters like me weren't worth the effort. I wasn't entirely without a role, though. In the original book, I was involved with a 4th male lead who appeared later. This 4th male lead was the heir to a crime family, known for his cold and ruthless nature. In the story, he was pursued by enemies, collapsed unconscious in an alley, and was then taken home and meticulously cared for by the original Joni. However, when he woke up, he fell in love with Joelle, the original Joni's sister. The original Joni loved the 4th male lead, and the 4th male lead loved Joelle. Their love-hate entanglement was quite a spectacle. Although the 4th male lead hadn't appeared yet, it didn't mean I was living well. For instance, it was 1:20 a.m., and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my resentment heavier than a ghost's. Right then, from the room separated by a single wall, came the sounds of several men panting and a girl sobbing softly, one after another. That room belonged to my sister Joelle and her male leads, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. This house was left to Joelle and me by our parents, who worked abroad year-round, so it was usually just the 2 of us. Joelle's men would sometimes sneak into the house at night to engage in their activities. I could tolerate one, but tonight, it sounded like all 3, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd male leads, were here. The male lead's seductive voice drifted through the wall. Joelle, why is your face so red? You guys are so mean. Always bullying me. Joelle whimpered softly, like a kitten. What do you mean, bullying you? We love you. The 2nd male lead chuckled. The 3rd male lead chimed in. Hurry up, it'll be my turn soon. Quiet down. Don't let my sister hear. Joelle pleaded, but her voice didn't diminish. Instead, it grew louder. All sorts of embarrassing and heart-pounding sounds brazenly emanated from next door. I tried to cover myself with the blanket, but the sound still pierced through. I can't live like this. Kill me, right now. I endured and endured, again and again, until I finally couldn't take it anymore. I ripped off the blanket, grabbed a copy of the bright red Criminal Code of the United States from my bookshelf, flipped through it, and loudly began to read. According to Article 301 of the Criminal Code, those who engage in promiscuous gatherings shall be sentenced to imprisonment of not more than 5 years. My voice echoed throughout the entire house, clear and resonant. Let the light of the law illuminate your defiled hearts. After I finished, the room next door instantly fell silent. I nodded contentedly, then flopped back into bed. Finally, I could get some good sleep. I was fine, but the male leads and Joelle were clearly not. The next day, when I came out of my room, I saw Joelle with dark circles under her eyes, sitting in the living room. With her was the 2nd male lead, Charles, a senior from Joelle's department. He appeared gentle but was actually a wolf in sheep's clothing. The first and third male leads must have left. I wondered how their night went. As soon as Joelle saw me, she frantically stood up, trying to cover her tracks. "Sister, Charles is here to tutor me," she explained. "Tutoring, huh?" I noticed the faint red marks on Joelle's fair neck. "Are those mosquito bites on your neck?" Joelle remembered what happened last night and tentatively asked. "Sister, I think I heard you reading something last night?" "Oh, that?" I replied. "I'm studying for my master's in law, so I was reciting the criminal code last night. Did I disturb you?" I feigned ignorance. Joelle's attention was drawn to my mention of a master's in law. She looked at me incredulously, as if I had uttered something shocking. "You're going for a master's in law? That's a huge career change. It must be very difficult." "Sister, don't be so fickle," Joelle said, sounding like she was genuinely advising me. It was understandable for her to think that. The original Joni and Joelle attended the same university, but the original Joni never focused on her studies and was in the worst major. With her abysmal grades, getting into graduate school was already tough, let alone cross-majoring in law. "I know some law students I could introduce you to," Charles offered gently. "No thanks," I said with a laugh. "I can manage on my own." I didn't want to get involved with any of these male leads. Besides, Charles looked like a wolf in sheep's clothing. With no good intentions, Charles said nothing at my refusal, but a flicker of mockery crossed his eyes. He was only offering out of politeness since I was Joelle's sister. Joelle was pure and kind, but he didn't believe for a second that I hadn't heard anything last night. He just hoped I'd be sensible and keep my mouth shut. As for studying for a master's in law, it was a pipe dream. The college organized a group outing for a spring hike, and I happened to be on the same bus as Joelle. For a trashy novel, any location could become a scene of great harmony, and the bus was no exception. Where there was the heroine, there were the male leads, especially since most of them were from the same school as her, making it quite convenient. The moment Joelle sat down in a seat not far from me, I knew something bad was about to happen. Sure enough, as soon as she settled, the three male leads gathered around her, completely surrounding her. Faint sounds drifted from their midst, reaching my ears. "Ethan, there are so many people here, we'll be easily discovered." "Don't," Joelle whimpered like a kitten, pleading. Ethan, the male lead, smiled wickedly. "Don't worry, we'll block them. They won't see anything." I couldn't see, but I could hear. I felt like my ears were going to bleed. The sounds grew louder and more outrageous, yet the other students around us seemed oblivious, chatting and laughing among themselves. Only I felt utterly uncomfortable. I couldn't live another day like this. Just as I was listening to those inappropriate and vulgar noises, on the verge of losing my temper and standing up, a lazy, magnetic male voice suddenly spoke from behind me. "If you're all in such a hurry, you can get off at the next left turn. There's a motel there. Feel free to use it." I turned my head to look, only to see a young man sitting behind me. He was wearing a loose black hoodie, the hood pulled over his head, casting a shadow over his face. His eyes were downcast, his expression languid. His pale skin contrasted with his red lips, giving him a mysterious, almost vampiric beauty. At his words, the entire bus seemed to press the pause button, instantly quieting down. Everyone turned to look in our direction. "What do you mean, Ethan?" the male lead demanded angrily. Joelle's face was flushed, her eyes glistening with tears as she looked at the young man, her pearly teeth biting her pink lower lip, an expression of unbearable humiliation. The young man was unmoved by her display, not even lifting an eyelid. His thin lips parted. "Don't you understand? If you really can't control yourselves, get off the bus and find a motel. $388 a night. It'll definitely satisfy your needs. Don't cause trouble here." He looked so refined, yet his words were explosive. Pfft! I couldn't help but burst out laughing. This guy was speaking for me. He was a true hero. In the silent bus, my laughter was particularly noticeable. The male leads all looked at me. Ethan's face instantly darkened when he saw me. My sudden shout about the criminal code the night before had almost scared him into impotence, and it had taken him 2 days to recover. The incident had cast a considerable shadow over his mind. The male lead originally wanted to confront the young man, but feeling Joelle tremble slightly in his arms, he realized this wasn't the place for an argument. Ethan picked up Joelle, his stern gaze sweeping over me before landing on the young man. "I'll remember you. You wait for me." With that, he carried Joelle off the bus. The second and third male leads followed closely behind. I was dumbfounded. They actually got off. I turned to look at the young man and found that he was also looking at me. His beautiful eyes held a hint of curiosity. I chuckled and gave him a thumbs up. The young man said nothing. Only the corners of his lips curved slightly. After that night and the group outing, Joelle and the others reined it in a bit. At least the male leads didn't secretly sneak into my house in the middle of the night anymore, allowing me to get a few rare nights of good sleep. I hummed a little tune as I left the house, intending to buy some things. As soon as I reached the alley near my home, I felt my foot suddenly step on something soft and warm. Startled, I immediately pulled back. Under the dim streetlight at the corner, I saw a person lying on the ground. The man was dressed in black, with short, messy black hair. He was curled up beside a trash can, his face cold and imposing, eyes tightly shut, and his complexion pale and motionless. He was clearly unconscious. At this point in time, combined with the man's extraordinary appearance and demeanor, I immediately realized that this had to be Felix, the fourth male lead. Felix was the heir to a crime family. In the original story, he was pursued by enemies, injured, and fainted in an alley, where the original Joni happened to find him and take him home. The original Joni meticulously cared for him. However, when Felix woke up, he didn't immediately thank the original Joni. Instead, he fell in love with her sister, Joelle, at first sight. The original Joni loved the fourth male lead and did everything for Felix, like a subservient puppy. But Felix only had Joelle in his heart and never spared the original Joni a glance, until one time, Joelle was taken abroad by two other male leads, and Felix, unable to find her, vented his frustration on the original Joni. Felix forcefully squeezed the original Joni's chin and said coldly, "You should be glad your face resembles Joelle's a bit." Then, he treated the original Joni as Joelle's substitute, using her as he pleased. When Joelle returned from abroad, Felix immediately discarded the original Joni like trash and turned to Joelle. The original Joni became vengeful and tried to harm Joelle, but Felix discovered her intentions. Felix, ruthless in his methods, tortured the original Joni and then threw her into a red light district. The original Joni completely lost hope and committed suicide. Joelle, to the very end, didn't know her sister was killed by the fourth male lead. After shedding a few tears for the original Joni, she turned around and lived happily ever after with the five male leads, bringing the story to a successful conclusion. I looked at the man lying on the ground like a corpse and sneered. Felix was the culprit who caused the original Joni's death. How could I possibly save him according to the plot? Thinking this, I unhesitatingly turned to leave, but less than 30 seconds later, I returned. Of course, I wasn't back to save Felix. I stared at the man on the ground, a sinister smile spreading across my face. Hee hee, a dark and windy night was the perfect time to do some mischief. I knelt down, confirming that Felix was indeed unconscious and that no one else was around. Then, with an evil grin, I cracked my knuckles. Slap! A crisp smack echoed as my palm connected with Felix's chiseled, handsome face, leaving an instant red mark. Slap! Another slap. Thinking of what Felix did to the original Joni in the story, I was filled with rage. This was probably my only chance to get revenge on Felix. I wouldn't have another opportunity later. After several slaps, I still felt unsatisfied. So, I delivered a left hook, a right hook, and a whirlwind kick. The original Joni truly lived up to her name, Joni, for her strength was considerable. I could easily lift Felix, a man over 6 feet tall, and give him a thorough beating. After I was done, Felix's face was bruised and swollen, his eyes tightly shut, and his eyebrows unconsciously knitted together in pain. Fearing he might wake up, I put him back where I found him and then quickly slipped away. Beating up Felix left me feeling refreshed. After buying my things, I returned home. As I opened the door, I froze at the sight of a familiar figure on the sofa. Lying on the sofa was none other than Felix, the man I had secretly beaten up just a short while ago. Joelle was tending to his unconscious form, applying medicine. What's going on? Who is he? I stammered, a bit flustered. Joelle glanced at me. Sister, this man was injured and unconscious. He looked so pitiful, so I brought him home, she said. I was speechless. If you find someone unconscious on the street, shouldn't you call 911 immediately? Why bring a stranger home? Did she think she was better than a doctor? Sure enough, I couldn't understand the logic of these trashy novels. However, now that the heroine had become the one to save the fourth male lead, I had no role in this part of the story. I could avoid getting entangled in this plotline. That was good. The next day, when I came out of my room, Felix was already awake. He had a bandage on his head and was leaning against the sofa, his gaze softly fixed on Joelle, who was making breakfast. Sure enough, the heroine's charm was immense. Just like in the original book, Felix had fallen in love with the heroine at first sight. Joelle saw that I was awake and, slightly shy, introduced him, pointing to Felix. "Sister, this is Felix." She had just met him and was already calling him brother. Things were progressing quickly. Felix heard her and his gaze fell on me. When he saw my face, his eyes sharpened, filled with curiosity and scrutiny. "I feel like we've met somewhere before," Felix said slowly. "No way," I thought. "When I was beating up Felix last night, he was unconscious. He shouldn't know it was me," I said calmly. "My sister and I look a bit alike, so it's normal for you to feel a sense of déjà vu." Felix didn't say anything, whether he believed it or not. I could feel his gaze, like a cold snake, scanning up and down my back, making me shiver involuntarily. That breakfast felt like sitting on pins and needles. As soon as I finished, I made my escape, using the excuse of going to the library. Felix watched my retreating back, his eyes dark and unreadable. He clearly remembered being chased and only sustaining a single stab wound to his abdomen. Yet, when he woke up, his whole body ached as if it had been dislocated, and his face and body were covered in injuries. While unconscious, he vaguely dreamed that he was being beaten. Struggling, he managed to open his eyes to a slit. Through that slit, he vaguely saw the silhouette of a woman against the light, very similar to Joelle's sister, but he had never met this Joni before. There was no reason for her to beat him. Could he really have been mistaken? Just like in the original plot, Felix fell in love with Joelle. To develop his relationship with Joelle, he used the excuse of his injuries not being fully healed to stay at our house. Meanwhile, news of Joelle bringing a man home somehow reached the ears of the other male leads. Their internal alarm bells rang, and they started coming to our house every few days, staging grand love rivalry scenes. Of course, these male leads expressed their jealousy by engaging in explicit acts with the heroine. I didn't want to stay in this house, but it was vacation time, and I had nowhere else to go except home, unless I moved out, but moving out required money, and I didn't have much saved up, so I urgently needed to earn some money. I heard about a tutoring position from an upperclassman. The requirements suited me, and it paid generously at $500 an hour. Without a second thought, I immediately went for the interview. When I arrived at the interview location, I was stunned by the massive estate before me. The butler greeted me, asked about my background, and then informed me that I had been successful. The butler introduced me to the general situation of the household. The owners were busy people and weren't often home. There were only 2 brothers in the house. The eldest son was already in college, and I was to tutor the 12-year-old younger son, Zion. Zion was in 7th grade and often missed school due to poor health, so he needed a tutor at home. Zion wasn't difficult to get along with, and my first lesson with him went quite smoothly. Just as I finished the lesson and was about to leave, I heard footsteps pattering down the spiral staircase. I looked up and froze when I saw who it was. The man in the loose black silk pajamas was the same young man from the group outing bus. His words were still fresh in my mind. At the time, I had even wondered why I hadn't seen him often, despite being at the same school. Now, here he was. Zion called him brother. So, he was the eldest son of this family. The young man lifted his eyelids, and when he saw me, his eyebrows slightly raised. "It's you," he said, recognizing me. "What a coincidence," I replied, and we exchanged pleasantries, introducing ourselves. When he heard my name, Joni, the corner of his mouth seemed to lift. I could see he was trying not to laugh, but he failed. "My name is Sebastian," the young man said, his voice pleasant and refreshing like mint. My attention was entirely on his name. Sebastian, the villain Sebastian from the original book. Combined with his appearance and family background, it had to be him. Wait, no, I thought. According to the plot, Sebastian should be competing with the male leads for the heroine, falling in love with her and becoming a villain. Why was he here? I finally remembered why I always felt like something was missing from the plot. Now I knew. The villain Sebastian, who should have appeared, hadn't shown up next to Joelle as per the plot. His only appearance was on the group outing bus, and his sharp words didn't seem to indicate any liking for the heroine. The heroine didn't even know him. What was going on? The plotline had completely gone off track. Perhaps my shock was too obvious. Sebastian looked at the colorful expressions on my face, his eyes subtly shifting. He asked, "Is my name that surprising?" "No, I just heard a lot about you at school, so I didn't expect it to be you," I lied with wide eyes. Sebastian replied, "We're in the same year." During my time tutoring at the Song family, I also secretly observed Sebastian. I found that Sebastian was nothing like the major villain in the plot. While I was helping Zion with his homework, Sebastian would sometimes be lounging on the living room sofa nearby, playing video games. His fingers gripping the controller were pale and well-defined, and he exuded an air of utter laziness. Sometimes, as we grew more familiar, we would chat a bit. Sebastian was not as sharp-tongued as he had been on the bus. Instead, he was quite polite. The more I watched him, the more I felt he was nothing like a major villain, just a handsome, well-off male college student. Time flew by during my tutoring sessions at the Song family. I always made sure to teach Zion my best during our 2-hour lessons. Otherwise, I wouldn't feel right accepting such high pay. Besides tutoring, I was also preparing for my exams. With my law background from before the transmigration, preparing wasn't difficult. Felix finally stopped staying at my house, which made me breathe a sigh of relief. This meant I had successfully avoided the fourth male lead's plotline. I wouldn't end up like the original Joni, suffering a tragic fate, would I? Just as I thought everything was smoothly falling into place, Felix suddenly confronted me. "Joni, I hope you can explain this to me," he said. I was walking home as usual after finishing my lessons at the Song family when a tall male figure suddenly blocked me in the alley. It was Felix. He held up his phone, which was playing a video feed from a nearby street camera. The video clearly showed me humming a song as I walked through the alley, initially expressionless, but for some reason, I paused, a mischievous smile spreading across my face, and turned back. When I emerged again, I looked refreshed and satisfied. After watching the recording, my heart sank. Darn it, I thought. I had specifically checked that there were no cameras in the alley. I didn't expect Felix to check the nearby street cameras. Although it didn't show me hitting him, it showed me passing through. I tried to argue, but Felix cut me off. "You're the only one who passed through there before Joelle saved me," he said. "So, who gave me all these injuries?" Felix stared at me, his gaze ominous and his voice chilling, tinged with a hint of gnawing resentment. He had felt something was off, so he specifically checked the surveillance. The moment he saw the familiar figure, he knew he hadn't been dreaming that day. The hateful woman who beat him was Joni. Although Felix's injuries had healed, the memory still sent a faint ache through him. Damn, it hurt so much, he thought. How could someone with such a slender build, similar to Joelle's, have so much strength? Injuries? What injuries? I feigned ignorance relentlessly. I was just passing by. Besides, how could a frail little girl like me possibly hit you? I blinked my big eyes, looking at him sincerely, making Felix briefly doubt himself. But Felix wasn't easily fooled. His large hand forcefully gripped my wrist, making it ache. He sneered, "Don't try to sweet-talk me. I'll just take you back and interrogate you properly." With that, he tried to drag me towards a black car parked nearby. Recalling the original Joni's fate in the plot, my face turned pale, and my heart pounded like a drum. I knew Felix's methods. If I fell into his hands today, I would definitely suffer a terrible end. My mind raced, trying to figure out how to escape. I looked at Felix, calculating the best angle for an over-the-shoulder throw. Just as I was getting closer to the car, about to be dragged inside by Felix, a familiar clear voice suddenly spoke from behind me. "Mr. Felix, where are you taking my little tutor late at night?" I turned around and saw Sebastian standing in the shadows behind us. His figure was slender, and as usual, his eyes were languid, his dark gaze fixed calmly on us. "What are you doing here?" I asked in surprise. Sebastian shrugged. "Had nothing to do tonight, so I went for a stroll. Just happened to wander here." I was silent for a moment. I remembered that this place was about 1-2 miles from the Song family estate. His casual stroll had taken him quite far. Felix seemed to recognize Sebastian. His expression changed. "Mr. Sebastian, I advise you not to meddle. This has nothing to do with you." Sebastian heard him and took a few steps forward, standing beside me. His fingers had somehow wrapped around my other wrist. His fingertips were slightly cool, a chill seeping into my skin, but I didn't feel repelled. "Joni is my family's tutor," he replied without much emotion. "If anything happens to her, and she can't tutor my brother tomorrow, Then it certainly has something to do with me. They each held one of my wrists, pulling me back and forth. I was swaying in the wind. Was this how the heroine felt, being fought over by various men? I was too unrefined for this. I truly couldn't enjoy it. In this tug-of-war, Sebastian ultimately gained the upper hand. For some reason, Felix seemed somewhat wary of him. You can protect her for now, but I don't believe you can protect her forever, Felix said, glaring at us before driving away. I'll give you a ride home, Sebastian offered. After what had just happened, I was still shaken and didn't refuse. On the way, I curiously asked Sebastian, "Do you know Felix?" "Yes," Sebastian replied concisely. He didn't elaborate, and I didn't press him. Although the plot for him had gone off course, a person destined to be a villain should have some tricks up their sleeve. Sebastian didn't just take me home that day. Every day after I finished tutoring Zion at the Song family, Sebastian would put down his game or other activities and either drive me or slowly walk behind me. I felt a bit awkward. "You really don't have to walk me," I said. Sebastian simply replied, "Zion really likes you as a tutor. He'd be sad if anything happened to you." I didn't refuse again, perhaps because of Sebastian's presence. Felix never came looking for me again. Sebastian would always walk me to the foot of my apartment building, and Joelle happened to see us a few times. One time, as I was returning home as usual, Joelle couldn't help but confront me. "Sister, why does that guy walk you home every day? What's your relationship with him?" Her tone was accusatory, as if I had done something shameful. "You don't seem to have the right to ask me that question, do you?" I said, looking at the inexplicable red marks on her neck. Joelle's face turned pale. Time flew by quickly. The vacation ended, and I was in my senior year. My study time became increasingly limited. I could only go to the Song family for tutoring on Saturdays and Sundays. However, Sebastian and I often ran into each other at school. Sebastian was in the same year as me, studying finance. He was very mysterious and low-key, often heard of but rarely seen. I secretly inquired about him. I heard his heart wasn't well, and he often missed school before. Now that his heart condition had supposedly improved, he appeared at school more often. This was also strange because the villain in the original book didn't have any heart problems. The upperclassman who introduced me to the tutoring job held a birthday party and invited me. He had helped me a lot, so I gladly went. To my surprise, Sebastian was there too. The upperclassman seemed to know Sebastian, patting his shoulder and teasing, "Big shot, you actually graced us with your presence. It's an honor." Sebastian chuckled but didn't say anything. Compared to the others present, Sebastian and I were relatively familiar, so we ended up sitting together. I indulged myself and had several drinks. By the time I realized it, my head was already swimming. The party had broken up, and I was slumped on the table, half asleep. Sebastian, who was sitting next to me, stood up and waved his long fingers in front of my face. Joni, let's go home now." His calling my name annoyed me, and I grabbed his waving fingers, mumbling, "Who's Joni? You're not Joni?" "I'm not Joni, I'm Mia," I slurred. Sebastian visibly froze. He didn't pull his hand away, just quietly looked at my flushed, drunken face. After a while, he smiled and replied, "All right, you're Mia." My behavior when drunk was terrible. I was like a wild horse. On the way back, with Sebastian helping me, I caused a lot of trouble. One moment I was pretending to be a monkey, the next I was howling folk songs. Hoo, I want to swing on vines. I want to run over all the monkeys. Sebastian helplessly pursed his lips. "Mia, you're drunk." I started to get crazy, rambling nonsense to Sebastian. "Even though I'm drunk, this mouth of mine will kiss men's mouths. These hands will touch men's abs. It's terrifying." I spoke with great emotion. Sebastian looked at me and smiled. Then, "Will you kiss me? I'm so scared," he teased. In the moonlight, his long eyelashes were lowered, his eyes dark as ink. His pale skin was bathed in moonlight, covered in a rich glow. His light pink lips curved upwards, like a silent invitation. "He dares to provoke me." My anger surged, and I grew bolder. Didn't he know I couldn't stand being provoked? "Man, you're playing with fire." Driven by alcohol, I acted in a flash. I directly stood on tiptoes, hooked my arms around his neck, and kissed him. Before transmigration, I had been single my whole life, so I didn't have much experience. My kiss was clumsy and lacked confidence. Just as I was about to pull back, a hand cupped the back of my head. Sebastian deepened the kiss, twisting and turning. When I woke up, I was already in my own home. Joelle told me that Sebastian had brought me back. The ridiculous kiss from last night instantly flashed clearly in my mind. I awkwardly and shamefully hugged my head, wishing I could just shoot myself. Why is this stupid mouth so undisciplined? Kissing anyone and everyone? Isn't it risking my life? If I had forgotten about it after a hangover, it would have been fine, but I remembered it so clearly, making me unsure how to face Sebastian. I have social anxiety. When I feel awkward, I want to hide. I found an excuse and resigned from the tutoring job. As soon as I told the butler I was quitting, I received a message from Sebastian. "Why did you quit?" I replied, "I'm too busy studying for exams." After a moment, he sent another message. "Are you avoiding me, Mia?" The simple words made my face flush. The name Mia hadn't been used in a long time, and it made me momentarily spaced out. Sebastian sent another message. "Why aren't you talking?" I bit my lip and replied, "I'm a highly emotionally intelligent person. Don't make things difficult for me, Sebastian." During this time, Sebastian called me several times, but I either rejected or hung up. I needed some time to cool down before I knew how to face him. But before I could calm down, an accident happened. Joelle and I were kidnapped. Yes, the essential cliché in trashy novels, kidnapping, then making the male lead choose between two people. From what the kidnapper said, it was because of Felix. These people were Felix's enemies and wanted to kidnap the woman he loved to threaten him. But what did that have to do with me? I had tried my best to avoid the fourth male lead's plotline. Felix probably only hated me now. I asked the kidnappers why they had captured me. They said, "We saw Felix tracking you several times." What else could that be but love? Me? I thought. He was trying to kill me. If Sebastian hadn't protected me, I'd probably be in pieces by now. At this point, Joelle, who was tied next to me, had tears in her eyes and asked accusingly, "Sister, when did you get involved with Felix?" I was speechless. "Sister, look at this situation. Is this the time for you to be jealous?" But Joelle ignored me. We were both tied up, and it didn't matter that our lives were hanging by a thread. Her beautiful eyes shed tears, accusingly staring at me. I ignored her gaze and tried to reason with the kidnappers. "Sirs, how much money are you asking for, now that you've kidnapped us?" The kidnapper snorted. "You two are worth at least $5 million each." I sincerely shook my head. "Sir, I'm not worth much, and Felix wouldn't ransom me anyway." The kidnappers didn't believe me, so I continued to persuade them. According to the criminal code, kidnapping others for the purpose of extortion is punishable by imprisonment of not less than 10 years or life imprisonment. If the circumstances are minor, it's also punishable by imprisonment of not less than 5 years. So, stop now. Unlawful acts lead to tears for loved ones. The kidnappers hesitated for a few seconds, seemingly considering my words. At that moment, Joelle suddenly burst into tears. "Felix, Ethan, I'm so scared. Please come and save me," she sobbed. The kidnappers' eyes instantly lit up when they heard Ethan's name. "The heir to the Sterling Group. We've unexpectedly gained more," they exclaimed. "The Sterling family is so rich. They must be worth at least $10 million. The kidnappers became excited, looking at Joelle as if she were a fat lamb. If they had any reservations just now, the huge profit incentive had clouded their minds. I was silent. Perhaps it was a telepathic connection, or just the heroine's tears. The warehouse door outside was kicked open. It was Felix, along with several other male leads. The 5 male leads descended like gods, and when they saw Joelle's tearful beauty, they were filled with unbearable heartache. Felix unhesitatingly pointed at Joelle. "I choose Joelle, whatever terms you set. Just give Joelle back to me." "What about her?" the kidnapper asked, pointing at me. Felix looked at me, a sneer playing on his lips. "As for her, you can dispose of her however you please." His tone was triumphant. He had wanted to get revenge on me anyway, and this was his chance. The kidnappers looked at me with a hint of sympathy. I inwardly cursed him as a dog. Behind my back, I secretly sped up the rate at which I was cutting the ropes with a piece of gravel. I still had to rely on myself. At that moment, a new, tall figure appeared directly in front of us. He pointed at me without hesitation. "I choose her," he said. I looked up, and it was Sebastian. He had appeared at the warehouse entrance unnoticed, his dark eyes calmly fixed solely on me. It would be a lie to say I wasn't touched. While the kidnappers had their backs to me, I seized the opportunity to wink at Sebastian, silently conveying my plan. I believed we had that kind of unspoken understanding. "Sebastian, as expected, understood and began negotiating with the kidnappers, distracting them. I finally cut through the ropes binding me. Just as I was about to stand up and ambush a kidnapper, Joelle's confused voice came from beside me. Sister, how did you? The kidnappers heard her and immediately turned around, alerted. Idiot. I couldn't bother to curse her. I punched the nearest kidnapper squarely in the face. My punch was strong, making his nose bleed, but the kidnapper's teammates reacted and rushed at me with knives. I desperately ran towards Sebastian and fell abruptly into a warm, mint-scented embrace. Sebastian put one arm around my waist, holding me protectively. His eyebrows were cold as he looked at the kidnappers. He kicked the charging kidnapper away. I quickly whispered to Sebastian, "What kind of plan did you prepare?" As the major villain in the original story, Sebastian should have some tricks up his sleeve. He wouldn't come alone, would he? Sebastian simply curled his lips. "Don't worry, I've arranged everything," he said. I was wondering from which direction Sebastian's people would rush out when police sirens suddenly sounded outside the warehouse, growing louder as they approached. A group of well-trained special police officers filed out, surrounding the entire warehouse. "This is your plan?" I asked. Sebastian smiled. "When there's trouble, of course, you call the police. Abide by the law, fight crime, and be a good citizen." Good for you. No wonder you're the man I like, I thought. Felix, who was comforting Joelle in the warehouse, saw the police and his face changed. The police quickly secured the scene. I buried my head in Sebastian's chest, not coming out. Wow, I thought. I never noticed how solid Sebastian's chest muscles were before. He clearly looks thin in clothes but has a muscular build underneath. I suppressed the urge to squeeze his muscles. I remembered something and curiously looked up at him. "How did you know I was here?" I asked. Sebastian replied, "It must be telepathy, Mia." That Mia made me remember the embarrassing incident from that night of heavy drinking again. I carefully looked at him. "Mia is my nickname. Do you believe me?" I asked. "Yes, I believe everything you say," Sebastian said, smiling, the curve of his lips very handsome. I didn't dare to meet his gaze and turn to leave, but he grabbed my wrist. "Mia, how long are you going to avoid me?" His voice sounded a little hurt. I turned to look at him. He said, "You kissed me last time, and you haven't taken responsibility yet." He looked at me, his eyes slightly wet and drooping at the corners, filled with a hint of grievance. Like an abandoned puppy, my heart softened a bit. It would be a lie to say I didn't have feelings for him. I had just been avoiding my own feelings because this was a fictional world, and I didn't belong here. Maybe one day I would suddenly transmigrate back to my original world. I didn't dare to form attachments with people here. I hesitated for a long time before speaking. "Sebastian, if, and I mean if, I suddenly leave or disappear from this world one day, and you can't find me anywhere, what would you do then?" I had imagined many possible answers from him, such as him asking where I would go or why I would disappear, but none of them were right. Sebastian looked at me, his eyes dark as concentrated ink, and said firmly, "Let's just love every day as if it's our last." I was stunned. I had considered thousands of answers, but I never expected this one. His persistent love was like a moth drawn to a flame, burning hotly in my heart. Sebastian and I started dating. I never expected Sebastian to be so clingy when in a relationship. I regretted it. Not long after the warehouse kidnapping, I heard that Felix had been arrested. Felix, being the heir to a crime family, had a lot of dirty business under his belt. His crimes alone were enough to warrant a life sentence. Before, the police hadn't arrested him, partly due to his male-led halo and partly because they lacked concrete evidence. The police were actually quite frustrated. Then, that day, when they took everyone back to the police station for questioning about the kidnapping, the police department suddenly received an anonymous email. The email listed all of Felix's crimes over the years and thoughtfully compiled all the evidence into clear, concise PPT slides. The evidence was irrefutable. The police looked at the PPTs, tears of gratitude in their eyes. This person is quite good, they thought. And just like that, Felix was arrested. He would probably spend the rest of his life in prison. When I heard this news, my first reaction was to look at Sebastian, who was sitting beside me, reading a book. "Was it you?" I asked. Sebastian blinked his moist eyes, looking at me innocently. "Mia, why would I be such a person to kick someone when they're down?" "You are," I said with a scoff. The longer I spent with him, the more I saw his true colors, a sweet exterior with a dark core. Unexpectedly, Joelle suddenly came to find me. The moment she saw me, her eyes were brimming with tears. "Sister, please save Felix. Why are you asking me?" I was confused. Joelle stammered. "Aren't you with Sebastian now? I heard he's going to be the head of the Song family. The Song family is so powerful. He must be able to rescue Felix. Sister, please, will you ask him?" I laughed in exasperation. "Felix going to jail is his own doing. Besides, he even tried to harm me. Why do you think I should save him?" Joelle cowered for a long time, perhaps feeling guilty, unable to speak. She had originally wanted to ask the other male leads for help, but they all saw Felix as a love rival, so why would they save him? So, she set her sights on me. I left her with a piece of advice: "Joelle, if you keep indulging, you'll only fall into a deeper abyss. To break free, you must become self-reliant." I don't know if Joelle took my words to heart. If she didn't, then all I could offer was my respect and blessings. I heard that Joelle went back and cried over Felix's situation. Then, comforted by the other male leads, she rallied. With Felix gone, new men appeared around her, and she and these men entered a new round of love-hate entanglement. I wasn't surprised when I heard these things. At first, I felt some sympathy for Joelle. I thought she was entangled with these men because she was controlled by the plot. Helpless and involuntarily, she seemed cherished but had long lost her own soul, becoming a wilting flower swaying in the wind. I had thought about saving her, but clearly, she chose this life herself. So be it. I had already broken free from the plotline. From now on, we had nothing to do with each other. And so, while I was memorizing legal articles, the heroine and male leads were having explicit encounters. While I was studying for graduate school, the heroine and male leads were having explicit encounters. When I successfully got into graduate school, the heroine was still having explicit encounters with the male leads. When I held my Master of Laws degree from a prestigious university, Joelle looked at me with a complicated expression. She probably never expected that her seemingly unaccomplished sister would actually become a Master of Laws. On the day of my graduation, as I walked out of the school, Sebastian was waiting for me at the entrance. His clear eyes looked at me, a handsome curve on his lips, just like when we first met. "I just graduated, so I've been quite anxious about finding a job," I said. Sebastian had just graduated and already taken over his family's company affairs. "My company needs a legal advisor. I wonder if Miss Mia is interested?" he asked. I chuckled. "No. Then I also need a Mrs. Song. Are you interested in that position?" he said. The man in front of me suddenly knelt on one knee, holding out a ring box containing a dazzling diamond ring. I smiled and held out my hand. "That I might consider. Later, through my tireless efforts, I successfully became a lawyer, providing pro bono legal aid to ordinary people who couldn't otherwise get help. This had been my dream even before I transmigrated, and I never expected to achieve it in this world. I had always secretly worried that I might suddenly return to my original world someday. Then I realized that Sebastian was actually more worried than I was, though he was better at hiding it. Looking at it this way, I suddenly wasn't so worried anymore. To be able to fulfill my dream and have a truly loving partner was already the greatest blessing. Just as he said, "Don't worry, don't be afraid. Let's love every day as if it's our last." Sebastian's side story. Sebastian discovered he was just a villain in a novel when he was 19. He suddenly had a dream, a terrifyingly vivid one. In the dream, he was a villain in a stupid novel. He fell in love with a woman named Joelle, but his love was unrequited, causing him to become extremely dark and fight with the men around the heroine. In the end, the Song family went bankrupt, and he was killed by his opponents. During this process, he didn't hesitate to break ties with his father, and to seize the family fortune. He even harmed his younger brother. When Sebastian woke up, he wanted to curse. The person in the dream seemed to have lost his mind. Aside from having his face, he had nothing in common with Sebastian. First, that Joelle was not his type at all. Second, he had little interest in inheriting the family fortune. He even found it troublesome when his father forced him to. Lastly, he had cunning, but he would never turn his blade on his own family. Although Zion was born to his stepmother and was his half-brother, he didn't dislike him and certainly wouldn't harm him. Therefore, he concluded that the person in the dream was a complete idiot with his face. He initially thought it was just an overly vivid, absurd dream, but when he went to school, he heard that a freshman named Joelle had arrived. She was quite pretty, and more importantly, several men in the department were already flocking around her. Sebastian's heart sank. He secretly observed and was horrified to find that everything was exactly as it had been in the dream. Could he be sure that the dream was real? He didn't want to be a puppet manipulated by the plot. He started trying to defy the plot, but defying the plot wasn't easy. Every time he defied it, his heart would ache as if someone was clutching it tightly, making him gasp for breath. This was the punishment for defying the plot. Sebastian scoffed. Let it hurt. If you're so capable, just kill me outright. As he defied the plot more often, Sebastian gradually felt the frequency of heart pain lessen, and the sense of restriction on his body also decreased. He completely broke free from this feeling on the group outing bus. According to the plot, he should have gotten entangled with the male leads and Joelle, but he defied it. He said sarcastic words, just as his heart was aching from defying the plot. A laugh suddenly came from beside him. The pain in his heart instantly vanished. He looked over curiously and saw a pair of clear, smiling eyes. The other person gave him a thumbs up. Sebastian couldn't help but smile too. With just one glance, he knew this person was absolutely different. He started secretly investigating this girl. The girl was named Joni, Joelle's sister. He heard that a month ago. Joni's personality had changed dramatically. She started diligently studying, saying she wanted to pursue a Master of Laws degree. Sebastian instinctively connected this to himself. Could this girl also have awakened like him? He heard that the girl was looking for a part-time job and wanted to move. He immediately felt this was a good opportunity to get close to her. He secretly found a friend who had a good relationship with Joni. He asked that friend to introduce Joni to a tutoring job, but not to mention that he was the one who revealed it. And so, he successfully became Zion's tutor. During their interactions, he discovered that she truly was different. He had initially thought that this girl was like him, an awakened paper character from this novel. But then, at that party, she drunkenly mumbled her real name, Mia. Sebastian finally understood. She was not from this world. They kissed, and his heart beat so wildly for the first time. It wasn't because of plot manipulation, but because his heart, Sebastian's heart, had truly fallen. At first, when he knew he was just a paper character, he found the entire world boring and ridiculous. Observing closely, he realized that many people were just puppets revolving around the male and female protagonists' plotlines. Being too clear-headed, knowing everything, wasn't always a good thing. He had lost interest in everything until he met Mia. It was as if a ray of light shone upon him, and his entire being was completely awakened. He had actually thought about what he would do if Mia suddenly left one day and returned to her own world. He had thought a lot about it, but he hid it well. He didn't want Mia to feel burdened by it. Finally, he concluded that if Mia left, he would probably follow her. No matter where, no matter which world, he would find her.